So hello. I got to see it there with you.
This is my cousin Nigel.
And so we have Guillermo del Toro, Genius. We have Mark Gustafson, Genius.
Well, yeah. And Nigel
And Guillermo's cousin Nigel.
from Morelia.
So I guess what I was not expecting was one of the adult Guillermo del Toro films. You get the ones that are you, and then you get the ones that are fun, and sometimes they're you, but a lot of I wouldn't have gone. This is like Pan's Labyrinth or whatever, but this is incredibly close to that's that same world.
That was the idea. The idea was for it to belong with those two movies, and that's why it took so long to finance. People said no, 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 no. But we knew that's what we wanted. And Mark came up with a great line as we were starting to finish the movie and doing the trailer. He said, "It's a story you think you do, but you don't." And that, I no matter what you're expecting, you're not expecting what's there. I guarantee that. But I felt that it would be beautiful to put those three movies together, Devil's Backbone, this and that, and you can watch them together. Right now, watch them at Netflix. But yeah, it is. I think in many ways it contains things that are more painful, even, and more close to real biography for me.
That was going to be my question to you. Is one of the things that I've learned is the films that matter to you are about you.
Yeah.
And so, are you Pinocchio or are you Geppetto?
Both. A little bit. We are all that. I mean, I think Mark is in the portraiture. Georgina Haynes, who made the puppets, is in there. The secret of directing is you do self-portraiture and provoke and invoke and promote that everybody does the same. But in terms of the story, because I've been a father and a son, I'm 58, and I've failed somewhat or been failed somewhat at both. Whatever I learned, whatever little lessons exist in failure, which are really important in life, I really wanted the movie to be almost like an exercise in forgiveness and love. And it's a movie that allows you to forgive anything, I hope. And it allows you to love and call back anyone you haven't called in a while. And it should move you to that direction. Because it's simple. Love is simple. Very hard to accept that, but it's very simple.
When did you read the book?
I read the book in my 20s. I saw the Disney movie when I was very young. And I thought, for the first time in my lengthy life, 7 years on this earth, I thought finally someone captures how scary it is to be a kid. And I thought, and Disney knew how scary it was. Then I read the book out of curiosity mostly when I was in my 20s, and I found great things in there. Crushing the Cricket, I loved. The Black Rabbits of Death, I loved. The fact that Pinocchio burns his legs. And one of the things that people don't talk about that much is, and I think it's episode 13, Collodi hangs Pinocchio and kills him. And I thought, I like that. And
we
then
cut that scene.
Yeah, but we boarded it actually. We boarded, yeah. But we thought maybe hanging him was a bit much.
So we settled on just burn him at the stake.
The mock crucifixion.
Shoot him, and crucify him, but don't hang him. Come on, yeah. But the reflection for me is about life, death, love. It's these are things that are very dear to both of us, actually. And I think, as you have expounded many, many times, death in this movie is more responsible than life. Life is like the younger sister that just says, come on, as Geppetto says, you gave me an absolutely terrifying joy, But death is very thoughtful. Death talks to Pinocchio. Death guides him into making a decision and becoming a real boy by not by changing flesh, but by changing self. So, we both are Death fan club guys.
Very much so. I love the designs of your deaths.
Yes.
And I love the fact that this is the first movie where, Doug Jones didn't have to put on the
Yes,
masks.
the poor man. Well, the idea was to make them look supernatural, meaning they're a mixture of three things: Mexican angels and the colonial, the seraphims and archangels in Mexico. They put eyes on the wings, on the feathers, and I don't know why, but as a kid, it impressed me.
It goes back, it's definitely Jewish as well. It's Jewish Kabbalah, the idea that the angel of death has wings covered with eyes, and that the eyes close at the moment of your death.
They're
beautiful
souls.
idea. Yes.
And I used it on Hellboy 2, and I used it on other images. And then the second part is Mexican chimeras called alebrijes.
Yeah.
And the final part is Mesopotamian images, which Judeo-Christian mythology emerges from Mesopotamian lore. And some of the figures have these wings that are very well defined sculpturally. And then what we did is give them masks because you want them to look equally uninvolved. Yeah. But actually the voice and the performance of Tilda is very different as death and as life,
I was about to ask, what did you learn, and Mark, what did you learn as co-directors from the performances that your actors gave you?
Everything, really. I mean, like cricket, for instance, I think Guillermo had a very different actor in mind to play it. And
stubbornly so.
Yeah, and then someone at Netflix, who was it? Was
Elisa
it?
Cobb.
Yeah, she said, "Well, what about Ewan?" And I think we were both like, "Well,
he's very young.
Yeah, he's brilliant, but is this right?" And she was absolutely right. He came in and instantly just killed it. Immediately, that warmth that he has in his voice is just incredible. And he had just come back from. He was still wearing his leather jacket from riding a motorcycle clear across the continent, and he just came in. Yeah, and he thought he was just going to meet with us and talk about the story. And we said, "No, the booth's over there," and he was just incredible.
We were listening to him, and I thought, "I'm a great writer." and we said, "No, we're not great writers. He's fantastic." I mean, that guy is. And the thing that happened is he was not prepared to record, and we guided him into a performance, and I think is the only time he really nailed cricket. He did all the lines, and then he would pick up efforts, but he never quite went back to cricket.
No, he was like somehow he was in just a sweet spot in that moment, and we got all this brilliant material from him. There's a parallel in Gregory, who plays Pinocchio, because he was 9 years old when we cast him, and he was so pure and just a beautiful soul, and I couldn't believe how true everything that came out of his mouth was.
Yeah,
there was just something about him. And then we recorded over a period of a couple of years, and he came in one morning and he said, "Good morning, Mark," and his voice had completely changed.
No, I got to do when we made Good Omens. I was incredibly fortunate in that our 11-year-old Antichrist voice broke between the show and ADR, which meant that all of his lines as a monstrous satanic creature are just him.
It was him.
It was him, but the voice had now broken.
Going through puberty.
Yes,
a monster.
Yes, the Antichrist.
The true monster. So when we made Coraline, I got to learn for myself that a really good day, you get 7 seconds in the can.
You guys were moving fast.
Connect me with your animators.
I was going to say.
No. In a week, an animator does get maybe 3 seconds. And that's very fast. Now,
Oh,
I don't know.
We had a lot of animators animating at the same
We
time
did
to get
60,
to our.
over 60 units. The thing is, Coraline was mostly replacement. So maybe that moved you a little higher.
Yeah.
But we mostly were mechanical. So, you know? And you can do the vowels and consonants and all that. And everything is mechanical. We have him, you want to
Yeah, and we did that. We did that for a reason, because we really wanted to give more agency and control over the performance back to the animator as much as possible.
Yeah.
And we wanted them to just own these shots. And the nice thing about these mechanical faces, although it's a slightly older technology, it's almost like, Leica pushed it, this whole stop motion into the future, and we kind of grabbed it and drug it back 5 years or so. Yeah. But we did that for a reason, because the animators can adjust in the middle of a scene or a shot, and they can do minute changes that you don't have to plan and have them all printed and ready to go. And they felt more in control of the performances that way.
They need, rather than a catalog of options, they need freedom. And we went for an acting style that is completely natural. If you see, there is no pantomime. And animation tends to be like a sitcom. Everybody's cool, they're all funny, they are flawed, but funny, they get great one-liners, they do the same goddamn poses in every animated movie you've ever seen. They're hip, and their one eyebrows is always raised, and it's like the Valley Girl sentences, and we didn't want anybody to be cool.
Guillermo made
Nobody.
me cut the whole skateboard scene completely. He said, nope.
We didn't want any kids that came in and say, whoa. And we didn't want any of that stuff. And we wanted for characters to act. We said, let's push the acting style to actor studio level. Mm-hmm. Let's really see the puppets thinking, feeling. We don't want, everybody can move the puppet, but who can actually make it think and feel? And we went for emotion rather than motion. And if you watch the movie again, or when you watch the movie again, please, this weekend on Netflix, on repeat, when you do that, you'll see that we did another thing that I started experimenting with on Troll Hunters, and it was, let's animate unnecessary acts. When you sit down on a chair, it's 6 movements in real life. In animation, it's super efficient. So we said, no, let them land on the wrong place, scooch a little. When Geppetto wakes up, he slips on the step, he gets tangled with a balloon. These are things that are not necessary. Now, if you think 1 to 3 seconds a week, that means that those unnecessary gestures took a week of time and money with an animator over and over and over and over again.
I was about to say one thing that I remember learning, to my shock, on Coraline, is that everything gets rehearsed.
Yes. Yeah.
You shoot it first before you do it.
Live action video, yeah.
Yeah, it's.
But we actually didn't rehearse very much. I mean, we did shoot live action video with the animators so that we could sort of understand the performance better and give them feedback on it. But no rehearsals.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, we didn't have that luxury. We just, we would occasionally do what we call a pop through, which is, where you need to know where the character is. Is it landing in its light? Is the focus right? Is this camera move working? But I know Leica does rehearsals, which is amazing. Yeah. But we didn't.
I'm glad you didn't. That's how I always assumed that.
But there's 2 things for that reason. One of them, we said to the animators, number one, we're going to credit you like actors in the main credits of the film. The voice cast comes up, and right then the animator, because they're not technicians, they're artists. Mm-hmm. And we wanted to do that, number one. Number two, very, very important, we said, between action and cut, like any other actor, you are in charge. If you want to try and be wrong or right, you want to try something different with the puppet, do it. Do it. As if it was an actor having an improv. And finally, one of the things is this movie needed to exist on a budget that is a little less than half of what a big stop-motion movie cost equally beautiful, but less costly because I didn't want anyone to fuck with us. No one. And I'm sorry, I have kids here? Oh, thank fucking God. Is there one? Sorry, thank God. Oh, sorry. No more. No, gosh darn it. We asked, I said, how much for you to leave us alone? How much do we need to cost for you to leave us alone? And I said, we will not preview this movie in any place ever, or be interested in an audience giving us notes ever. And we didn't. It was completely protected creatively. I didn't want to know what a soccer family in Tarzana had to say about life or death. And I think when we said that to the animators, they knew their work was going to be protected artistically.
I also think rehearsals are kind of a two-edged sword. I mean, it's nice for a director to be able to see that, but I was an animator for many years, and the amount of yourself that you pour into a shot, it's exhausting. And if you waste that precious energy, and it's not all a waste, but on a rehearsal, you have less for the actual shot. And also, if an animator knows that they're going in and doing the real thing, they can really they can perform better, I think.
I was an animator for a few hours, and I agree.
It's much more like a live performance, because it's happening linearly, and you're not going to go back necessarily and fix anything. It's happening right in front of the camera, and the other thing is it's such an intimate relationship between the puppet and the animator. It's like no other form. It's just there's a camera, and you, the animator, and the puppet, and the end product is not, it's not touched by a million hands.
So how much of what you were doing was practical in these days of VFX?
Most of it. If the water was touching the puppet and skimming off it, it was a little drops animated. Mm-hmm. If it was going in front of the camera, it wasn't. The water on the ocean was art directed to look like almost gelatin, but move like water, so it would look organic. Snow, fire, but we even animated the fire as a rehearsal.
Yeah, we did. For certain elements, we said, okay, well, what would fire, for instance, what would it look like if we had to do it practically?
And we did.
And so we did it, and then we gave that to the digital artist and said, this is what fire looks like in our world.
But everything we could, even shots like, for example, Pinocchio dismounts from the table with the popcorn, and every single kernel was animated with one wire, each kernel. So when they fall, they're being animated by an animator. So we tried, or when they blow the shavings of wood, as much as we could, we did physical.
What was your impulse, seeing that you're animated, which allows you to do anything and to go anywhere? Mm-hmm. What was your impulse? What drove you away from the Disney-ish transitions, the children into asses, the cat and the wolf as literal cat and wolf?
And I know, if everything is magical, nothing is. Mm-hmm. Right? So you have to limit the elements of magic or the conduit of magic to one element. Everything related to Pinocchio is coded blue, and that is going to be magic. The cricket, the life giver, the death, the book of Carlo's scarf, the balloon that tells Geppetto where to go, the rabbits, the other world, all that is blue. Even the dogfish, which I think is a test, just like it was in Pan's Labyrinth. It's a magical test. And I think that everything goes through Pinocchio. Everything is related to Carlo and Pinocchio. And I said one anomaly per film, right? And the thing that was important was Pleasure Island in the original narrative is a test of enjoyment and penance, or reality, the real consequences. And I didn't like that. I thought, let them play war, shoot each other with paint, throw confettis. It's all fun, like Pleasure Island. And then he puts a real gun on the table and says, shoot the puppet. That's the real consequence. So the function, narratively, is the same. But instead of turning into donkeys, they put gas masks. And they uniform them like that. And I thought that's more consequential to this. And I really think for kids to hear that now Candlewick has to shoot his friend was a lot more harrowing than they turned into American werewolf in Donkeyland, Yeah.
So when did you write the script?
We wrote it two complete sets of scripts with the same ideas but organized very differently. We started in 2004 or 5 with Matthew Robbins, my partner for many movies, and then again with Patrick McHale, who wrote a fantastic series called Over the Garden Wall. And the idea for everyone, it was to say, we need to push. When people ask about this movie, is it for kids? I would say it's not made for kids, but kids can watch it if their parents talk to them. This is not a babysitter movie that you turn on and walk away. You're going to get questions. You're going to get curiosity. This is not child-proof outlets for everyone, And I think Patrick comes from animation, and it's great animation. And we said animation is not a genre for kids. It's a medium for art. Let's push it towards discussion of adult themes and all that. And Pat has the Jungian depth that I like and favor. Bruno Bettelheim, Maria Tatar, Jack Sipes, all this anthropology of fairy tales. We could discuss it openly.
What do you hope that people are going to take away from Pinocchio?
Love and forgiveness. Love and forgiveness. When people say, oh, it's a dark Pinocchio, I say, darker than what? A shampoo commercial is darker than this fucking thing because it's lying. The only darkness in our world is lies. So 3 commercials are more full of lies and darkness for me. This is full of truth. These are things, the final line, when I wrote it, I was in tears. I wrote a longer version of it. and we shorten it, but what happens, and then we're gone, is something very real that you think only after you reach a certain marker in your life. And to say, to organize the story in the symmetry of a man that is obsessed with perfection and can't accept death. Because it's more the story of Geppetto than Pinocchio in a way. And ends accepting death and accepting imperfection joyfully. These are things that are very personal. If people can take forgiveness, if you were moved by these things, that's a gift for me. And you want to talk about Geppetto and how we...
Yeah, I mean, I found that really interesting, that it's fundamentally almost more the story of Geppetto than it is Pinocchio. Because Pinocchio doesn't change much. He comes into the world naked and unfinished, and that's how he goes through the whole story, pretty much. And Geppetto, who's created him, sees him, and he doesn't recognize the miracle that he's been given, because it's not exactly what he thought it was. Like, for instance, Carlo, his first son, when we meet him in the film, a lot of that sequence is, in this sort of montage. And so that's sort of the same way your mind kind of romanticizes, a memory. And that's what he's trying to turn Pinocchio into, is this idealized version of his dead son. And that's just never going to be. And that's his journey, to figure out, no, wait a minute. This is not Carlo. This is his own person. So Pinocchio, everybody in the movie who comes across him gets changed. Pinocchio changes very little, which is sort of exactly the opposite of the sort of classic version.
It makes one decision, and that was when we were animating that shot. I said, please give me a lot more head and a lot more tail. And then when he decides, when she says, you do it, you break the rules. He had to know he was going to die if he did that, and he needed to decide that. But I think it's more urgent and more beautiful to make a movie about disobedience being a virtue, a movie about not a puppet being beaten to submission by morals to turn him into a real and good boy, but a father taught how to be a good father. You know, it's much more urgent, and to celebrate Pinocchio for the freedom he has. And I think these are subjects that are very hard. Being a father or being a kid are really hard because there are roles that are imposed. The father has to be infallible in the traditional role, and it's so beautiful not to be. And the child has to become almost an accessory of pride to the parent, and it's so good not to be. So, you know, I really wanted to make a movie that broached those ideas and allowed people to talk about it. It's so great to talk to your dad. I did before he passed away after Shape of Water. I sat down and I said, look, this is how it feels to be me, and this is how I see you, and this is what I saw you do. And it was not important if he changed or not. He didn't. But he was moved. He understood. I saw him, and I understood he was not my father. He was a guy that happened to be my father. You know, he didn't ask to be my father, which is a giant shadow. And he just was a guy that became my father, and he was fallible.
Speaking as the father of a 7-year-old boy, I found myself identifying with Geppetto over and over again through that film, and going, you know, and remembering my dad, who I once upset him enough that once in his life, and only once, he left me a poem on my bed. And I remember just picking it up, and the first 2 lines have always stayed with me, because they were, if I could, I would dower you with experience without experience. And I thought that's the tragedy of being a father. You want to go, look, don't make my mistakes.
Yeah.
But you know that they're going to have to make their own mistakes in order to get through life, because that's what life is.
It's exactly right. And the thing with this is I feel that Geppetto, there's a moment in which he awakes to this, but most of us, I went and very conscientiously in my teenage years, I said, if I become a father, when I become a father, I will not make any of his mistakes. And I went the opposite way in every decision, and I did exactly what he did. You know, and then I thought, you know, it's something that weighs heavily on me, and I wanted to talk about it. It's not, if you see the movie, when you see the movie this weekend, when you see the movie, is beautiful that Pinocchio is a handful on the beginning. He's not an innocent little angel. He is a handful. He moves weird. He talks weird. He has an incredible energy, boundless energy for a guy in his late 70s, early 80s. He's going to go, oh, my God. And he is a very imperfect Geppetto. Normally, the Pinocchio movies present him as an angelic, almost like a cotton candy commercial of old age. This guy drinks, is irascible, is impatient. He's not too bright. He's not too bright, and he likes to be loved by the town, approved by the town. And there's that, the moment of biggest confrontation is in the white birch forest, when he calls him a burden, and he hurts the kid. And we needed that moment. And they are, the key to this movie is when the cricket defines it as a story about imperfect fathers and imperfect sons.
Very, very much so. Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Geppetto.